Hello, dear conference participants. Today we are going to present our research, The Phenomenon of Fear in Ukrainian Literature for Children and Youth, about the events of the Holodomor of 1932-1933. The theme is due to the growing interest of the younger generation of Ukrainians in their own history, the originality of the artistic interpretation of historical events in the latest author's text, the realities of the modern historical age and the translation of traumatic experiences in the modern context. Despite the fact that for a long time the theme of the Holodomor of 1932-1933 in Ukraine has been a subject to objective comprehension by study of literature, there is a stratum of literary text of the relevant subject directed to the children's and youth audience, which is still on the periphery of scientific studies. The relevance of our research is increased by the modern situation in Ukraine, when in the child's life the essential place belongs to the situation of threat, and as a result the stimulation of fear as a basic reaction to it. It allows a person to comprehend the limits of his capabilities, socio-cultural existence, and self-realization. To a child who feels uncomfortable in the real world, full of threats and cruelty, experiencing the emotion of fear allows to assert himself, overcome despair, confusion, powerlessness, as well to express value guidelines, emphasizing on the ideals of good and justice, responsibility, respect, and the ability to make his own decision. Consequently, fiction which contains the experience of fear of both the characters and the author of the work, their pain, traumatic experience, plays a complementary role in the process of initiation of the child, is a means of influence on the emotional sphere. Therefore, it's worth stating the important mission of a literary text which performs therapeutic and cathartic functions. The article considers the form of fear and the means of their representation on the material of the following Ukrainian arts works on the theme of the Holodomor of 1932-1933, such as Кондьор by Юрій Збанацький, Скриня Chest by Катерина Єгорушкіна, Три сходинки Голодомору, Three Steps of the Holodomor by Ліна Заржицька, Чорна хустка, Black Shawl by Микола Понеділок, Бевка by Микола Магера, Великий злочин маленького Михася, Great Crime of Little Михась by Олекса Кобець. They take an important place in the area of historical prose, which not only accumulates a complex of knowledge about this historical period, but also becomes an important factor in the formation of national identity, national self-consciousness of the personality. The aim of the article is to consider the forms of manifestation of fear and the specificity of their representation in Ukrainian literature for children and youth about the events of the Holodomor of 1932-1933. In our work, we have used general scientific methods of analysis, method systematization, and generalization of the material, which contributed to the development of theoretical and historical literary sources. We have used them in order to determine the specificity of artistic representation of forms of fear as a category of human existence in literature for and about children. We have applied a systematic method as well to find out the dynamics of the Holodomor theme in Ukrainian literature of the beginning of the 21st centuries in general, and creativity for children and youth in particular. Historical, typological, and cultural historical methods to outline the genre and style features of the analyzed works, comparison with the phenomena of the same historical chronological level, and to find out the style of the author's originality. A special place in our research belongs to psychoanalytic means, which made it possible to look at the Ukrainian literature about the famine of 1932-1933 in the context of psychological and social drama, to comprehend the author's specificity of modeling artistic images, representation of conflict. We have also used techniques of socio-cultural and structural analysis as a necessary condition for objective conclusions. In our research, we consider fear as an emotion that consists of certain and quite specific physiological changes, expansive behavior, and the specific experience that grows from the expectation of a threat or a danger. Attention is paid to the philosophical consideration of fear by Hegel, the understanding of this phenomenon as a philosophical concept by Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Freud, Schopenhauer, fear as an existential feeling in works by Heidegger, Jaspers, Tillich, Sartre, Camus. Emphasis is placed on the study of fear as an integral element of human existence by Rank, Young, Horny, Fromm. The research of Movchan, Turenko, Kashuba, Yelagin, Shevchuk, Panfilova is analyzed in the work. Based on the analysis of scientific sources, we differentiated the forms: real, existential, metaphysical, functions, protective, motivational, adaptive, educational, socially controlling, and types of fear: agitational, trouble, caution, fright, anxiety, actually fear, horror. Various individual and social forms of fear: fear of death, fear of loneliness, fear of stranger, fear before separation, fear to live, fear of destruction, fear before exam, neurotic fear, free fear, infantile fear, have been identified. Emphasis is placed on children's fears, including the fear of the dark, loneliness, enclosed space, death, animals, fairy tale characters, censure. We note that the leitmotif of these works is hunger and fear for physical existence, fear of hunger. To be hungry, to see a hungry person, to see a person who died of hunger, becomes a dominant kind of fear in the artistic area of the works. It exalts physiological animal mechanisms in a person but levels spiritual and social ones. We emphasize that the analyzed text actualizes both real fears, which are reaction to the perception of external danger: fear of power, fear of being left at home alone, fear of the dark, fear of the death, fear of a particular person, fear of being punished, and metaphysical fear, horror, anxiety, which is characterized with the absence of a rationally defined object. Hunger appears as a personification of some living terrible monster in a short story Чорна хустка, Black Shawl by Микола Понеділок. Cutter's fear guilt, fear of the future, fear of being left without food, fear of helplessness, fear of witnessing a starvation. All these forms of empirical fear the author presents in the text of the story. Endowed with feelings of love for their neighbor, compassion, pity, and responsibility, characters are often capable of self-sacrifice for the sake of the weak, helpless person. The main characters in Cobbetts Maher's works. In order to save their dearest people, to help them, they are capable of brave actions, which are opposite to weakness and fear in the works. This is bravery of an emotional impulse, Катруся in Понеділок's work, bravery of a patient decision, Olena in Zarzycka's work, the headmaster in Збанацький's work. Particular attention is paid to the story Skrynia, chest by Katerina Yegorushkina, meant for the youngest reader. The events of the Holodomor are presented as one of the historical treasures of the Ukrainian people, preserved by the national memory. The author narrates about the tree of life, which is depicted on the chest. This chest contains our past with universal moral values formed over the centuries, the dreams and hopes of Ukrainians. The writer tries to avoid literally depicting the Holodomor tragedy and its consequences in the text. Therefore, numerous deaths of Ukrainians from starvation appear as metaphors and symbols in the work. Citation: that winter many children turned into flowers, and even more babies into birds. Many green fruits fell down. The birds carried them to hot countries, lulling them to sleep with the thongs. To show those enormous events, the author uses the indefinite personal sentences, which also indicate the arrival of representatives of the Soviet government to the villagers. Citation: there were no potatoes left, and the bread was taken away, told us to share, said that they would take a little, instead took everything away. They didn't feel sorry even for small children. In the story «Три сходинки Голодомору» Three Steps of the Holodomor by Lina Zarzycka, the personification of fear and starvation is a black bunny kitten, whose ghost appears now here, now there in the village in which the main characters live. The ghost of the kitten and the sound of spilled cherry pits scare everyone. This is fear anxiety as a symbol of an all-embracing tragedy, and people can do nothing. The state of fear anxiety is in keeping with the states of nature in the story. They are used to illustrate the dynamics of complex people's mental processes, their emotions and feelings. Pictures of nature synthesize the author's vision of events with the feelings of the characters of the story, their love for their neighbor, love for every living thing, and at the same time the danger of existence, insecurity, helplessness, as components of the great tragedy which the villagers endure. Trying to reconstruct the terrible reality of 1932-1933, the writer shows the horror of famine in the raw, create its generalized image as a threat, attracting and capturing the reader's attention, his concentration on socially important events and phenomena. Real and metaphysical fears in Ukrainian literary works for children and youth on the theme of the Holodomor are represented by psychologism techniques, reproduction of state of the nature, metaphors, symbols that emphasize the writer's attitude and style. In order to show emotional tension, the writers use the lexical and semantic field of coloratives, endowed with a certain symbolic meaning and syntactic constructions. They help to reveal the aesthetic reality and the author's concept of reality, and at the same time there is an influence on the reader's consciousness. The research outlines the prospect of further scientific study, which may be connected with comprehending the forms of fear in Ukrainian works for and about children of the modern period. Comparative study of artistic heritage about the events of the Holodomor, directed to adults and children, Ukrainian and foreign literature on this issue. Thank you for your attention.